Hi guys, Kiara Bickers here. So today I saw that the ledger hack had happened. Actually, it was more like yesterday. So yesterday I was on Twitter. I saw people shit talking Ledger and I said, oh, what is going on over here? Doesn't look like good news for Ledger or anyone who bought from Ledger. I want to just make this video about what the Ledger hack actually is, like what happened, and how you can avoid things like this in the future. Okay, so at this point, I want to just switch over to a screen share and I can show you directly from here. Ledger is a hardware wallet company that specializes in storing Bitcoin. Okay, and this has probably been the gold standard for, I shouldn't say the gold standard. This is the silver standard for people who want to store Bitcoin off of their computer, off of the internet, right? So this is cold storage. This is what they specialize in. This is literally all that they do is produce hardware wallets that you can buy from them and store your Bitcoin on in a way that is more safe than having them perhaps at an exchange or most certainly in like a wallet that's just sitting on your computer. Okay, so this is a website that I found, or this is just a blog post that I found that will talk a little bit about what happened. So physical addresses of 270,000 Ledger owners leaked on a hacker forum. So the hacker forum is raidsforum.com. Basically, this guy dropped a whole bunch of emails as a text file, but the really devastating thing here is that it's not just emails, it's emails, addresses, and phone numbers. Dang. Oh my god. Let's see. This was their comment on Twitter. Today we were alerted to the dump of the contents of a Ledger customer database on Raid Forum. Today, that seems very unlikely, and I'll talk to you about why I think that's unlikely that they just learned about it today, which was yesterday now at the time of this recording. We are still confirming, but early signs tell us that this indeed could be the contents from our e-commerce database from June 2020. Okay. Their e-commerce database, meaning that people who bought ledgers from them in I don't know how far back it goes, but people who bought ledgers from them directly, they kept all of that customer data, which is, I once had a coworker and a friend, she was also a lawyer, so coworker, friend, lawyer, talked to me about how she thinks of customer data. And she said, I think of customer data as nuclear waste. You don't want to touch it and you want to get rid of it as soon as possible. And I think that's really the mentality that more people need to have. Okay, so this was sort of the insult to injury here. They sent out this important security update to approximately 115,000 customers. I think that's right. And the data breach was twice that size. So they sent out this important email update saying like, hey, you might have been in a leak, and if someone shows up at your door because your address was exposed, our bad. What should you do? If you're receiving this email, we have no evidence of user wallets being affected. Yeah, that's probably true. But it's smart to place security over convenience. In order to make sure your assets are safe, install the latest version of the software. Okay, so they're recommending a software update because they had a data breach. That actually makes me more concerned. I mean, you should always update, so I guess it's just standard protocol there. What this actually means is that this is going to be a huge increase in phishing attempts for the people who are exposed in the addresses. I think the likelihood of someone showing up at your house is probably still pretty low, even though the fact that it's possible is already irritating enough. But the more likely thing here is that if you are a part of this data breach, or if you're a part of one of these data breaches in the future, is you're going to become a target for phishing attempts, okay? And a phishing attempt is really just someone trying to trick you into sending them your Bitcoin by making some sort of social appeal. They're going to try and get you to click a link or to throw over your password, right? Like, it looks like what they're showing here is it's a phishing attempt where, let's see. It's a phishing attempt that's trying to get the recovery phrase. Wow. Yeah, that makes sense. So This phishing attempt is trying to get your recovery phrase on your ledger, your 12 or 24 word mnemonic, so that they can recreate your ledger on their own device, meaning that they don't even have to come to your house. This is how they want to steal your Bitcoins. All right. So, man, props to the guy who came up with that one. That's messed up. Okay, what should ledger owners do? I'm not going to read all that. I'm going to tell you what I think you should do, right? They're saying be vigilant against phishing attempts. This is your only hope. I want to talk about how you could prevent stuff like this from happening in the future. If you look at this thread where all this information was dropped, you'll realize that like people are talking about buying and selling this data. Someone was trying to sell me this data for 20 coins, LOL. This data has been bought and sold for nearly 6 figures. This was sort of the motivation for dropping the information. They're saying, well, if people are going to buy this data for 6 figures, I'm just going to make it free so at least people don't buy and sell it anymore. Which, I mean, that's a choice. There's another really famous saying that says information wants to be free, right? So someone had information that was just extremely expensive and the information has now been made free. Okay, so this is a website called Have I Been Pwned? And I'm sort of jumping ahead here, but this is like legit one of my favorite websites. And the point of this website is that you put in your email address here or anyone's email address, and it'll tell you what data breaches they were in, right? So you'll see here that like the ledger accounts was just recently added. So all of the email addresses associated with ledger accounts are now a part of this search engine. I use this for email validation. So if I'm trying to reach someone and I don't exactly have their address, but I could maybe make a reasonable guess that it's, I don't know, first name dot last name at theirdomain.com, then I'll put that in here and I'll take a guess and see if it's valid. So let's just give you an example so you can see. So if my name is John and I own john@gmail.com, which, you know, obviously this guy doesn't actually own this email address, because if he did, he would be getting so much spam that it wouldn't be worth having john@gmail.com. So you click on this thing at Pwned, right? And he was in 233 data breaches. Yeah, this is not, I feel fine using his email address because this is probably not this email address is probably not really in use. But you can just see the amount of shit and like email address, passwords, like all of the stuff that exposed, IP address, passwords, phone number. It just goes on and on and on. Employers, geographic location, job titles, names, salutations. That's kind of funny. You get the idea. So these are all the different websites that have known data breaches. This was one that exposed physical addresses. You can see that right there. Although that's pretty rare. So if I were to look here, this guy was a part of over 200 breaches, and it looks like, oh gosh, it looks like there's 64. So maybe that's 30 because they use the word twice, but I'm just trying to get a rough percentage. When a data breach happens, leaking physical addresses is like seriously the worst case scenario, and it's not as common as email addresses and passwords, just because when you go to some website, you don't usually have to give them your address, right? You usually just give them your email address. You create a custom password. The risk here is, imagine if this guy is using the same username and the same password at all these places. Now, all I have to do is figure, well, where is he banking at? Well, where does he live? I bet I could find out where he lives based on all of these email addresses. Like, I have such a detailed persona. Again, not on this real guy because he's probably not a real guy. But you know, if I look up your own name and you can see all the different databases that you were involved in, you know, video games, you could probably figure out how old he is. Like, this is just such a gold mine of information for people who don't know what it is. I highly recommend checking it out. Okay, now to talk about, I don't want to show the actual email address here, but this is someone whose email was leaked in the Ledger data breach. And you'll see specifically, this is all I wanted to show, is that Ledger is included here, right? So in June of 2020, hardware crypto wallet manufacturer Ledger suffered a data breach that exposed over 1 million email addresses. But really what's important here, and what I want you to take away from this, is how you can avoid things like this happening to you in the future. So a really simple trick that you can do is that if you're john@gmail.com, right? All you have to do is just add the service with a plus at the end of your email before the @ what this does is all of the emails sent to this email address will still go to this one, right? This and this are the same as far as email direction goes. This is just a mini lesson in SecOps. And even better, going one step higher than that, would be to have an email address not associated with your name at all. So you would just want to say like insecure@gmail.com, and then like for every website if you can, because some websites will not allow you to do this. They don't want the plus there. What this does is it means like, okay, so if this is actually leaked, if this information is leaked, no one can trace that back to your name. Okay, so because addresses were also leaked, you really do want to get a PO box, especially when you're buying things that are Bitcoin related, because this is such a honeypot. I found this great meme where, okay, like, yeah, Ledger says your private keys are safe, but welcome to this person's home address, right? Like, there's really nothing stopping a crazy person from knocking on the door of people's homes, which is a troubling thought. So I hope that a lot of those addresses were fake, and knowing Bitcoiners, I assume at least a good percentage of them were. Not as in fake as in they don't exist, but fake as in like they're not a primary residence, or, you know, it's something like that. Okay. So before I end this video, I wanted to talk about a question that I got over email from a guy, Derek. Derek, I believe your question was something along the lines of, can't Ledger just take my private keys and send it? That's not quite true. So you said that you had bought a copy of my book, so I'm just gonna pull up this image. When you get to the chapter of smart contracts, this will be explained in more depth, but I figured, because you probably haven't read it yet, I'll just start with like one of the earliest images. What this is explaining is how public key cryptography sort of works. I mean, this is obviously a very high level explanation, but essentially you have this public key and you have a private key. The private key only unlocks your Bitcoins, and what unlocks actually means, which is the portion of understanding that comes later in the book, is that unlocking means to sign, right? So your ledger is only really capable of signing transactions. It creates a transaction and then it signs it with its private key. It doesn't have access to the internet. So can Ledger just steal your funds out from your ledger? No. That being said, you know, every time you send Bitcoin, you're using the Ledger app, which is obviously connected to the internet, because how are you going to send Bitcoin if you're not connected over the internet, right? So, no, Derek, I hope that answers your question, that Ledger can't really steal your private keys. I do think they have like a whole devastating branding thing to deal with. You know, this is what I'll say. You are explicitly trusting Ledger when you buy a Ledger device. Like, they've made the hardware, you're running their software. Like, you're trusting that they're doing security properly, and they've sort of demonstrated that they can't, at least when it comes to managing user data. I think what makes me hesitant to really go whole hog against Ledger is this stuff is so hard, but the actual securing of your hardware wallet is a technically difficult problem to some extent, and not many people do it well. So I would say, you know, if you're going to use a Ledger device, know that you're explicitly trusting Ledger in the same way you're explicitly trusting an exchange when you use them. Although you kind of know a little bit more about what's going on with your hardware device than you do about what's going on in an exchange. So, you know, to pick your poison. I hope that answers your question. If anyone else has any questions that they want to ask me, you can drop a comment in the comment section below, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers and more cheers. Done.